Mic check. Great. Hello, everyone. I think I'm ready to start. Great. Thank you all for coming. This session's keeping your data in place with Office 365 archiving and retention. My name is Deepak. I'm supposed to be presenting with Sanjay. He's not here. He said one Ramaswamy on stage was good enough. So, yeah, I had to do that. He ditched me last second. Anyway, so what this means is I'm going to be switching between my slide deck and my demos a lot, so please do bear with me. The Wi-Fi here has been a little patchy, but I'll try to make sure everything works. Great. So why are you guys here? You guys have gone to a couple of sessions before this, I'm guessing. Anybody been to Rudy's session, Kamal's session? Yeah. Okay, so most of you are new. That's a good thing. The main reason I'm guessing you guys are here for are three. The first thing is reduce risk. All your Office 365 data, it's important for you to make sure that you satisfy legal requirements, you make sure that the data is not accessible to external people, and so on and so forth. The second thing is simplification. Most of the people here who use third-party archives, you have to maintain two different stores, you have to pay for managing two different stores, and we want to get rid of all those problems by giving Office 365 as your one-stop shop for both your messaging, collaboration, and compliance. The third thing is saving money. Really simple. Third-party archives, they cost a lot of money, and we want to make sure we give you the money savings by picking Office 365. So that's all the marketing pitch that I'm going to do in this session because most of it has been done before. A little bit about myself. I started with Microsoft 3.5 years ago. I joined Exchange Server, so I can answer every one of your Exchange Server questions. If you have SharePoint OneDrive questions, I'll try my best, but I also have a PM from SharePoint OneDrive, Simon, sitting in the front row, so he can help you guys with that as well. I do live in Seattle. Seattle's beautiful. I wanted to put that picture up just so that I could see what it looked like on a big screen. But I worked really hard to get up there. But we are the information protection team. What that means is we no longer do just Exchange, no longer do just SharePoint. We do everything, right? We do all of Office 365 content. That means Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Lync, Yammer. But this is just Microsoft content, right? But we want to make sure we expand this to more than just Microsoft. And I'll be talking more about that during the session. All right, let's get to it. So what is archiving? Lots of people have different definitions of archiving. But a very simple statement is the tools that help you to store, preserve, and expire data, right? There was a gentleman here who came and asked me, can you help me figure out how to keep all my data forever? Yes, I can help you with that. Can you help me figure out how to expire data on time? I can help you with that. Let's say if I keep this data forever, can you actually help me scale that storage? Yes, we can. So those are the things I'll be talking to you about. The first part, obviously, is importing the data. Exchange came a little late to the party. Office 365 is a little late to the party, but we want to bring you the best in breed. And we are innovating really fast, and we want to be the best archiving solution there is. But for all of you guys who've had this requirement for a long time, for 10 years, 15 years, most of your data is sitting in third-party archives. How many of you here have third-party archives? How many of you here hate third-party archives? Thank you. So that's what I'm going to help you with. The first thing that comes to mind when you talk about third-party archives is, oh, we've got too much data in there, like terabytes of data. And when you come to Microsoft and say, I've got terabytes of data, I'm like, how are you going to import it over the network? Oh, sorry, sir, that's going to take you 3 years. That's going to take you 20 years. Some people actually have 400 terabytes of data. It's going to take you 20 years if you do the standard bandwidth. And the fastest way has always been ship drives, right? You guys have heard this before in the other presentations. Drive shipping preview is now public, it's open, and it's free. Right now, it is free and it's open. Anybody and everybody can go access the preview in Office 365 today. We start support with PST files because PST files are the easiest ones. You have all your PSTs sitting on file shares. It's really easy to bring it onto a common location and then ship it to us. The other thing about third-party archiving data is you can also export it from, let's say, Symantec Enterprise Vault or whatever other third-party solution you have into PST format, and then once again ship it to us. So it's the minimum thing that we had to do to unblock you. And then you talk about terabytes of data. I already said 400 terabytes, not a problem. Most of you here are probably going to be in the 5, 10, 20, less than 100 range. It's not going to be a problem. And I'll talk about how much time it will actually take during the course of the presentation. One point I want to make there is partner support. Office 365 wants to be your destination for pretty much all your data, and we're not going to be able to do that by ourselves. So we have a lot of partners. You might have gone through their booths downstairs over there. We are working with a lot of partners to make sure that we make it easy for you guys to bring the data into Office 365. The second thing is storage. The reason we kind of waited until we built the import solution was because we wanted to make sure we have a scalable storage solution, right? And one of the requirements we firmly believe in is the end user should never be impacted by compliance. What that means is you could have unlimited storage, but still have a full fidelity client experience. No plugins, no add-ons, no stubs, no shortcuts, none of that. Because what those do is confuse the user. You have to constantly keep upgrading your versions and Outlook and all that stuff. So we don't want any of that. And the final thing is maintaining the duplicate store, managing journaling, all that stuff. It's really complicated. When things go wrong, you really don't know what to do. AD connectors, you have to keep syncing. Passwords, you have to keep syncing. Anytime you have a password policy, you have to go to a separate store and then change those things as well. We want to get rid of all those problems for you, but we want to do it in place with the scalable storage that we provide. And then finally, retention, which I would also like to call life cycle of data. There are people who say, I want to keep my data forever. But there are people who say, I want to keep my data for a certain period of time during which it can never be deleted. It needs to be preserved. And then once that period is up, it needs to get deleted. One of the things Microsoft has struggled with in the past is having each workload define its own policy. And what I'll be talking today is how we are trying to make sure that we have one unified policy for all your Microsoft workloads, and even your, other than Microsoft data types, we try to bring it into that same workloads that exist today, so you can still run that common policy on all of those things. All right, import. Where is the data located? So if you notice, this is a pie chart, but it's not an accurate pie chart. But I just wanted to list out most of the things that we have today. We have on-prem workloads. You've got Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, you've got Lync, and then mostly file shares. File shares are such a bane because every time you do an e-discovery search, it becomes such a problem going through file shares. You've got your third-party archives, and then you've got your on-prem third-party workloads, for email and enterprise content management. There are a lot of financial companies who use IAM providers like Bloomberg, which is, again, a very important requirement for you to archive and run e-discovery on. SMS is also becoming pretty important right now. And then finally, the latest trend is social media. Everybody is saying, oh my God, if you post anything on Facebook, post anything on Twitter, it's going to be used against you. So you need to archive that stuff as well. You need to make sure that things that don't match your policy don't get to Facebook or Twitter. So we hear all those things, and we want to give you a full solution, and that's what the roadmap is going to be defined based on. So let's start with the stuff that we are introducing right now. This is the drive shipping solution. Now, I have a very detailed chart over there, but For the people who are sitting in front, they can obviously see it. For the people sitting in the back, I'll give you a very high-level look at how this thing works. Exchange is a messaging platform. SharePoint is a collaboration platform. Both are not well equipped to handle files that come in at a large, in a large quantity. We do, fortunately, have this product called Azure. Azure can scale. Azure can do storage at a very, very high performance, right? So what we ended up doing was working with the Azure storage team to build the drive shipping solution on top of what they call the Azure Import-Export service. But the cool thing is, the whole thing is Office 365. As a customer, when you go in and try this feature, you will not see the seams of Azure. Maybe a little bit here and there, but we're going to keep ironing it out so that you get a full Office 365 experience. So how does this whole thing work? The first thing you need to do is obviously collect all your PSTs. Today, that is a problem in itself, and we are looking to solve that. We do have partners who can help you with that today. If you have any questions, I'll be at the booth later on, and I can give you recommendations on partners who can help you collect PSTs that are scattered all over file shares and user laptops and so on and so forth. So first thing you do, collect those PSTs. And then you obviously need to tell me which PST is going into which user's mailbox. So what we have here is a very simple CSV file that says, okay, this is the name of the PST, this is where it's found, the source file path, and then this is the target destination mailbox in Office 365. You give me that CSV file. So the first thing you do, collect those PSTs into a common location, generate the CSV file, and then we give you a tool that's called the import-export tool. What the tool is going to do is it's going to first encrypt the data, it's going to encrypt the drive. And the drive I want to call out is a very specific thing. It's a 3.5-inch SATA drive. It's not those cool-looking USB drives with fancy, plugins and all that stuff. It's just a simple SATA drive. You can get a 1 terabyte drive for like $49 on Amazon if you want. We support up to 4 terabytes per drive. 6 terabyte drive support is also coming very soon, which means if you have 40 terabytes of data, you can ship 10 drives to us and you can be done with it, right? And we do support multiple drives coming in at the same time. The way we actually do that in the data center is when we get the drives, all the drives get plugged into the data rack, and we have 100 racks per data center, and each 100 ports in each data center, and we have close to 16 data centers that are accepting drives right now, all over the world. So, so go back to the green box right now. Create those drives. At the end of the drive creation process, what you get is a journal file. And the journal file is pretty simple. What it has is the serial number of the drive, the BitLocker key of the drive, and then just a hash key that says this is the data that's in the drive. It's a really small file, like few KBs. Now you go and ship the drive, right? The drive travels separately. It's encrypted. Anybody, FedEx, cannot open it because it is BitLocker encrypted. The guy in the data center who receives it and plugs it in cannot open it because it's BitLocker encrypted. The BitLocker key, you go into Office 365, and I'll show you that experience. You go into Office 365 and you upload the BitLocker key in there through the journal file, along with that CSV mapping file that I talked about. Now this is where the magic starts to happen. The guy plugs it in. We know that this is the tracking number of the drive, and we know this is the journal file of the drive. So we submit a job that looks for those drives that get plugged in. We now have the BitLocker key because you uploaded it through Office 365. We crack open the drive, copy the contents, and put it in Azure Blob Store. And this whole process takes only a day, right? Which means the time takes to ship the drive, you can use FedEx, USPS, whatever you want. Let's say you chose 2-day shipping. We're going to get the drives in 2 days. It takes 8 hours to copy a 4 terabyte drive. And like I said, because we can do multiple drives at the same time, all it takes is 8 hours to copy 40 terabytes, right? So now the data is in Microsoft's boundary. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Previously, what used to happen is you guys used to have tools like PST Capture, or you had tools which ran on-prem, connected to Exchange directly. multiple failures because you had to run Exchange, there's MRS endpoints, all that stuff. Super confusing and a lot of workload dependencies on your on-prem installation. What we did was we completely shifted that problem to us. We do all that work in Azure. All you need to do is just transfer files. That's it. It's a simple file copy. What we'll do is we'll go through all the PSTs. We'll find all the PSTs that have problems. We'll try to fix those PSTs. And then the ones that we cannot fix, we'll let you know, okay, these are the ones we couldn't fix. Within each PST, what are the items that we couldn't import? And we'll give you a report of that. So all the hard work of transferring data from PST into Exchange, we take care of it. Now what this means is we give you the drives back immediately. 8 hours, we give the data is copied into Azure Blob. Now we ship the drives back because you've given us your carrier account number, which is a FedEx or a DHL number. So you guys get charged for the drives. The drives are they belong to you. We will not erase the drive because they are BitLocker encrypted. We will give it back to you the same way we got it. So now the data is sitting in Azure. What we've built is a really fast pipeline from Azure to Exchange Online. We have the Office 365 data center and the Azure data center co-located, which means we have a very high bandwidth connection and we can do much faster transfers between the Azure Blob and the PST. And I can tell you this, we've done testing, internal testing, and we've done drive shipping of data that belongs to Microsoft. So Microsoft LCA is one of the biggest users of this service. They were our first customers, and we used them to kind of figure out if this thing works because there are so many moving parts. We've seen anywhere between 250 gigs per day to 1.3 terabytes per day getting transferred, right? And the reason for this wide range is because it depends on the number of mailboxes that these PSTs are going to. If you have a large number of PSTs that are distributed across a large number of mailboxes, then you're going to get much higher speeds because the data is going to be traveling in parallel. But if you do have a lot of PSTs going into the single user or a really large PST, it's going to take a little bit longer. So that's the reason why we have this wide range. But we are working really hard to make sure that performance is always at its best. And we keep making those improvements as we go on. So I talked about PST files. We also have Simon from the SharePoint and OneDrive team. Anybody go to his session yesterday about SharePoint migration? All right, a couple. So what they introduced yesterday was an API that will help you package SharePoint files or file shares, and then and at the end of it, you get what is called a content file and a manifest file. The content obviously contains the data from your websites, from your SharePoint on-prem, file shares, etc. And the metadata the manifest is pretty much the metadata on those. So the same way we do PSTs, you can also do SharePoint migration and OneDrive migration. And I'll also show you a demo of how that works. We are releasing PST. PST is released right now. You can go try it. SharePoint will probably light it up in a month or so. And please just keep a lookout on the TechNet page for import service. We'll update it when we're ready. So let me quickly jump into a demo here. Excellent. Okay, so what we've done is we've included this new tab called Import in Office 365 Admin Center. We do have a small requirement that in order to see this, you need to have the mailbox import-export role in Exchange. And for those who don't know what that is, you can just go look that up. It's really easy to do. Just go add yourself to the role. If you're already a tenant admin, go into organization management and add the import-export role. If you do a Google search on the Office 365 import service, all the instructions are in there. So when you are in the import tab, what you see is a couple of options. The first thing is ship the data on the hard drives, or you want to upload data over the internet. The second option is it's really straightforward. What we are saying is if you don't have that much data that justifies shipping in a hard drive, you can still upload it over the network. But this, again, is simply an FTP transfer to Azure. You can use the standard tools of Azure AZ Copy and just put those files from wherever it is into the destination blob container that we will provide. So let's say you want to do the physical hard drive. What we've done underneath while that page was loading was create an Azure account for you, right? So we own the overall Azure subscription, but within each Azure subscription, we create what is called a storage account. And each storage account contains folders, it contains containers, and so on and so forth. What we've done is create a dedicated container for you underneath, but you don't have to know about those things. You don't have to pay for the Azure stuff, right? We will take care of all the billing with Azure. All you're dealing with is Office 365. So when you do that and you hit copy key, what it's doing is going and fetching your Azure details from Azure and then displaying the key. Now this is the key that you would be using to copy the data from your file shares, wherever it is on-prem, into the hard drive. The link to the tool is also available. You can just go in there and download the tool. A typical tool run would look like this. If you see here, WA import export, this is the journal file. The source directory is your file share. Your destination directory is your Azure blob. And then this is the key that I just showed you. And then what you can also do is specify the target. The /t over there is pretty much the drive letter of your hard drive. And then the encrypt flag is pretty much going to BitLocker key your hard drive. So really simple. Once you run this, the data gets copied into your hard drive, and then you get the journal file generated. So I would now go click. I've prepared my hard drives, and I have the journal file and the mapping file that I showed you earlier. So this is what a typical mapping file looks like. You see here, really simple. The workload here is Exchange. The file path is where your PST files are located. This is the name of the PST. This is the target mailbox. And then this is whether you want the PST data to go into your archive or your primary mailbox. So you can specify both. If you specify this archive is true, it's going to go into your archive. If you specify this archive is false, then it's your primary. The reason I would say send the data to your archive is because the archive is online only, which means if you're going to import a lot of data into Office 365 into your primary mailbox, what that's going to do is trigger a sync storm with Outlook. Anytime the user opens Outlook for the first time, you're going to have a lot of network connectivity issues because everybody is going to start downloading the data. You pretty much lose the benefit of doing the import. So you want to make sure that if you're going to do it into the primary, do it in a staged way. Talking about staging, the reason we ask you to submit that mapping file is it tells us exactly which PSTs you want to upload. Now there's a couple of strategies that I can suggest. Let's say you have 40 terabytes. You obviously don't want to do all 40 terabytes at once. Sometimes people just take time to stage it and see if it works, and so on and so forth. So you can still give us all the 40 terabytes. We would still store it in Azure. And then the files that you want to get imported, let's say week 1, you want 100 users PST files. So you would submit a mapping file that contains only 100 users and 100 PSTs. And then the second week, and then the third week. So as we keep getting those mapping files, that's the trigger for us to kind of go in and say, this is the PST that we need to import from Azure Blob. So that's a nice strategy to follow if you're trying to import a large amount of data. So I have the mapping file. I hit next, give it a name. And this is the drive file that I was talking about. Let me actually show you what the drive file looks like so you guys get an idea of what I'm talking about. Really simple. Drive ID, BitLocker key, this is the manifest, and this is the hash. Just like I said. Really simple, really easy to generate. I have too many browser windows open. And then provide the mapping file. And give your name, phone number, the address to which you want the drives to get returned to. I want to call this out. The shipping address. The way we determine the shipping address is based on where your Exchange mailboxes are located, not where you currently live. So we go through your Exchange tenant. We determine that your mailboxes are in North America, or if they are in Europe, or if they're in Asia. And then we suggest the closest data center to you based on the maximum bandwidth that we can provide. Typically, within North America, we have 4 data centers that we would round robin you to. But if you have any special requirements, you can always contact us and say, this is the easiest data center that I can ship to, so we can help you get it to that data center. Well, I guess the devs have done a good job there. All right. So once the job gets created, what you need to do is go ship those drives. And then once you ship the drives, you come here and enter the tracking number, and that's it. Once you enter the tracking number, we'll keep looking out for the drive to come in, and then everything that I told you will start to happen. All right. So that was the PST import demo. Now, I also want to show you a quick view of what SharePoint would look like. I'm not actually going to show you the process like I did, but if you see here, this is what the SharePoint would look like. So we would give you the file container. This is where all the files have been uploaded into Azure. This is the manifest. And a typical file and manifest would look like this. So your files are going to be in a documents folder, which is a list, and then all this stuff, right? And then your manifest, again, is going to be really simple, really straightforward. It's like 8 XML files. Go through Simon's presentation, and he explains what those are. Once the data is in Azure, you can use what is, there is this free tool on CodePlex. We use this for all our testing. Your PSTs go into this folder called ingestion data. This is Azure Storage Explorer. What you're seeing is basically the data sitting in Azure right now. And for SharePoint, again, you would see the file and the manifest. Right? Now, what would that look like in SharePoint after it's been imported? All the data would sit in the documents folder because that's where we imported it. And if you see sample folder, big doc, and simple file. So this is SharePoint working on our internal testing site. But like I said, we'll be releasing that really soon. All right. 1 month. Yep. So a couple of things that I want to talk about. There are a few folks for who just the BitLocker level encryption is not good enough. For those scenarios, what we've done is we've also created an end-user encryption tool. You can download it in the TechNet site right now. What that does is you can encrypt those PST files even before you transfer it into the hard drive, right? So that gives you an extra layer of protection. The data that's sitting in Azure is encrypted. The data sitting in the drive is double encrypted. Auto creation of the destination mailbox, we don't have that today, but we're working on that, so that way you don't have to worry about, is this mailbox available, and so on and so forth. Today, if you try to import data into a mailbox that does not exist, we fail it. Inactive, I'll talk about it really soon. The mapping file. So one of the things that we noticed was people make mistakes in the mapping file. And we don't want the data to go into the wrong mailbox. So we've done a lot of work on our end to make sure that we think this is the target destination mailbox, and we'll make sure it is. And if it is not, we'll tell you, hey, this doesn't match the files, the items that are going into this mailbox. Are you sure this is what you want to do? Just to protect you guys. If you're a government customer or an ITAR customer or a dedicated customer, we've got some work coming for you, mainly because of the fact that we use Azure Public Cloud now, but we are also launching this feature on Azure Fairfax, which is the government equivalent of Office 365 GCC. And then finally, chain of custody. We are also working on that. We'll make sure that we give you a full chain of custody report on all the files and all the items. I do want to call out, so the third-party import, it's not working, unfortunately, but I do want to call this out. Import partners. As I mentioned earlier, we cannot do this without our partners. We have specifically worked with Transvault and Nuix to help figure out if you have a third-party archive solution, they can help you extract the data into PST format, and then they would automatically plug into the drive shipping solution. Please go visit their booths, and you can find out how you can get the data out of, let's say, Symantec Enterprise Vault. All right, so that is the import service. We are really excited to launch this feature. I will take all questions in the end if you don't mind. And like I said, I'm also going to be at the booth, so you guys can ask me questions over there as well. All right, storage. Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint. We've always said that in Exchange, we provide the unlimited archive. The screwed up thing was we always made you call support to increase the quota every time somebody hit that quota in Office 365. So very soon, we will be getting rid of that. You will truly have unlimited quota. It'll be launching sometime in the next 2-3 months. You will no longer see an archive quota. What the other quota that people get confused about is what is called the recoverable items quota. That again, if your data is in the recoverable items of the archive, in the next 2 months we will stop, enforcing any quota and making you call us to increase it and all that stuff. Like I said, within the next 2 months, or starting after 2 months, we will be rolling out this feature as well. For OneDrive for Business, you guys know this is a well-published limit, 1 terabyte site collection limit. We can scale as much as you want. And then infinite tenant storage scale, which means your tenant can grow as much as it wants. So I want to call this out. Exchange has this concept called the personal archive. And then people get confused. Is this archive? What is archiving? Why does Exchange have so many confusing terms, right? All the personal archive is an overflow container. You don't need it for 99.9% of your users if they have less than 5 gigs of data. For your CEO who's on eternal hold or has like hundreds or 200 gigs of data, it makes sense to have the personal archive. The primary mailbox has a 50 gig limit, which we will not be increasing. And the main reason for that is Outlook connects to it. And when you run Outlook in cache mode, you start having performance issues when it connects to a mailbox that's larger than X GB per day, right? So that's the main reason why we have a limit on Outlook, on the primary mailbox. But the archive, we don't have such limits because it's online-only mode. With the large mailbox and archiving, what you have is access from pretty much all your email clients, your Outlook Web Access, no time managing quota, and then you can import all those PST files, like I said, into the personal archive. You'll get the same exact experience that you would get with your primary mailbox. And the user, you would run e-discovery on the user. You would put preservation policies, retention policies on the user. And the user encompasses both the primary and archive mailbox. So there's no separate management anywhere over here. You get this one unified experience. So today, this is Exchange's archive. So if you can see, you get the separate node called the in-place archive. You see the archive Sarah Davis. And if you see underneath, you have the recoverable items, which is your immutable container. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. All right. Quickly switch to a demo here. How many of you attended Kamal and Ben's session on Unified Compliance Console yesterday? Anybody? All right. So I am going to be showing this off in the UCC. So this is the Unified Compliance Console. This is where all of the information protection team's features live. If you see archiving, devices, e-discovery, DLP, all the good stuff is in here. Now what we've done over here is make it really simple for you to go create the archive mailbox for all your users. You will see an entire user list, and then what you can do is bulk add archives for pretty much all your users. Today, the experience in Exchange Admin Center is really, it's really hard because you need to go into every user, go into their details, and then enable an archive, which is really painful. So what we did was, since we do have a tab for archiving, we made it really easy to go in and enable archives for everybody all at once. And then we also give you a neat view of how much data the person is actually using. All right. Switching over to retention. So how many, you said a bunch of you use third-party archiving solutions, but how many of you use Office 365 as your one and only archiving solution? Right? It's a small number, but how many of you want to use Office 365 as your one and only? Yeah, it's great. So it is our goal to help you do all this, right? We want to make sure that all your legal obligations are met, your corporate standards are met, and if you have industry regulations, all of these, we want to help you meet those regulations. And we are working on a lot of features on one hand, but we're also working with audit firms on the other side so that we can get ourselves certified to make sure that there are certain laws like SEC 17A4, which Microsoft always gets beat up about. We are working to make sure that we do get some third-party certification from that. I'll talk about some of the features that we need to get those certifications and how they are in the roadmap. So when you talk about retention, it kind of means a couple of things. For people who use third-party archives, and Office 365 is simply a messaging platform, retention means just get rid of the data in Office 365, just a deletion policy, right? Because you don't want users to have access to risky data. And for you guys, the only action that you're interested in is deletion. But if you're using Office 365 as your only archiving solution, what that means is you might have a policy that's like a 6-year delete or a 7-year retention policy. What that means is for those 7 years, you don't want the data to get deleted. You want to preserve that data, and once those 7 years are up, that data needs to get deleted. That is retention. We kind of messed it up with calling it litigation hold and in-place hold and a bunch of terms that really confuses people. But moving forward, retention means two things. For the people who use third-party archives, retention is deletion. For the people who use Office 365 as your archive, it's preserving for that X amount of years and then deleting once those X years are up. So that is what this is. And the other thing that we've struggled with in the past and we want to fix, and we are fixing right now, is one policy for all your workloads. This means Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and obviously Lync, which is stored in Exchange. And I'll be showing you a quick demo of that as well. Automated policy enforcement, we will have timer jobs running in SharePoint and OneDrive, and in Exchange we have the ELC Assistant, which is also time-based. It goes and deletes stuff based on the time that you set. It is different from e-discovery and legal holds. There is going to be a session later today at 5 o'clock with Quentin and Rocky where they will talk about how in cases of e-discovery and case management, you place a hold, and that hold typically is indefinite. You pick a bunch of custodians and then you place them on hold. The underlying technology is still the same for preservation and hold, but from a scenario standpoint, because you guys are here for the archiving session, our definition of retention is preservation for those X years. And for some people who say, I don't want to preserve for X years, I want to preserve forever, we do have an option for that as well. I'll show you how that's done. The final point there, the DLBCC information preserved, I do want to call that out because that's what Symantec Enterprise Vault always used to say Microsoft does not have. And they always used that as a munition against us, saying, oh, you will not be compliant if you use Exchange as retention or Exchange as e-discovery, Office 365 e-discovery. That is no longer the case. In Exchange, we now, when you place a preservation policy or a retention policy in Exchange, we do preserve the DLBCC information. For more information on that, just contact me afterwards and I'll explain how the whole thing works. All right, let's do retention. So if you see here, this is the new Preservation Policy Center in the Unified Compliance Console. What this means is, so I'll give you a test policy for Ignite. So if you see here, 2 checkboxes, and this is the big deal. We've integrated both Exchange and SharePoint and OneDrive into one policy engine. What this means is you don't have to go create a separate policy in Exchange and then a separate policy in SharePoint anymore. Everything happens from this one place, which is the Compliance Console. If you do select mailboxes and this, you get options to obviously pick the mailboxes. And then if you hit next, you also get to pick your SharePoint and OneDrive sites. So you can enter the site URL in there. So what does this look like for Exchange? If you're an Exchange user, this means that if a person tries to delete a mailbox, or tries to delete the contents of a mailbox, it goes into the recoverable items discovery holds folder or the purges folder. If you try to delete the mailbox itself, it will fail because it knows that the mailbox is under a preservation policy. For SharePoint, what it means is there is this whole library that gets created in the site. It's called the preservation hold library. What this means is all the data that people try to delete will get stored in that library. It is a hidden library, so users can't go mess with that. So that is retention if you're using Office 365 as your primary archiving solution. One place to do everything. No need to manage it in 2 different places, 3 different places anymore. Now, what about the people who want to just delete data? For those people, what we've always had is what we've called retention tags and retention policies in Exchange. So if you go into Exchange, these are your retention policies and retention tags. How many of you have played around with this? Okay. What this is going to do is help you create tags that manage the deletion of data from your Exchange mailboxes. A simple example is this will apply automatically to the entire mailbox. If I do that, these are the options you get. You want to delete the data when the item reaches a certain age, right? It's really simple. You create this one tag, put it in a policy, and then apply this policy on those mailboxes, and then everything in the mailbox that crosses a certain age will automatically get deleted. Now, we never had this for SharePoint, and I'm happy to announce that we are now doing that for SharePoint as well. This is called Document Deletion Policy Center for SharePoint and OneDrive. What this means is really similar to what we had in Exchange. You can go in, you can create a policy with rules in it. What that rule is going to look like, let me show you what that is. So if you go create a new item, this is built on SharePoint, so our UI options are kind of limited. And then you go click the rule. If you see here, it's really simple. You give it a name, and then what is the delete action? You want to delete it immediately, or you want to move it to the recycle bin? And then what is the delete going to be based off of? It's going to be the last modified date or the created date, and then the time period after which the deletion would run. So once you create this deletion policy with those rules in there, you can go and apply those policies to site templates or to site collections. So if you look at this, what I've done is I've applied this delete after 1 year policy to my OneDrive for Business site. The way you do that is go click here, choose the template, and over here I can just say assign it to the OneDrive for Business template, right? I can also assign it to my team sites, blog sites, pretty much all your standard SharePoint templates. And then the other thing you can do is also mark it for specific site collections. So this is really cool. Most of this stuff is going to be released using the Unified Compliance Center. When do you know when it's getting released for everyone? Yes, it's out. So that means everybody can go use it. That's good. So I said, retention means two things. One, delete everything immediately, or then preserve and then delete. Inactive users. How many people know what inactive users are? For those who don't, you don't have to pay for the users who don't exist in your organization if you're using Office 365. It's simple as that. We've introduced this new feature called inactive users. What this means is, if you have data that's sitting, for, let's say I'm part of Microsoft right now, I've got a lot of data sitting in my preservation libraries, sitting in my Exchange mailboxes, and then tomorrow I decide, you know what, I'm going back to India. I'm not going to work for Microsoft anymore. At that point, I still have a 7-year policy on my mailbox, which means there's data that needs to be kept for 7 years. But then asking you to pay for the data did not seem it seemed a little unfair. So what we've done is we've created this inactive mailbox solution. What that means is you can go into Exchange and then into Office 365 and then delete that user, which means you don't have to pay for licenses for that user anymore, right? The data is under preservation. It'll be preserved for as long as you need it, which is the 7-year policy that you put it. Once those 7 years are up, our system will still go delete the data. But for those duration of the 7 years, you don't have to pay for it. This is really cool. The other thing that I do want to mention is PST imports. Typically, you have PSTs of users who've long left your company. We do support PST import into inactive mailboxes. It's slightly convoluted right now. You just have to, the first thing you need to do is create a user, an active user, finish the import, and then turn them into inactive. That's what you need to do right now, but we are making investments to make sure that if you have already gotten inactive users, you can import the data into inactive mailboxes. The one thing that inactive mailboxes obviously don't have is end-user access, because it is there only for e-discovery purposes and to make sure that you guys satisfy your legal requirements. But I think it's still great because you're not paying for it. How does it work? So the first thing you need to do is either the user is placed on hold or there's a preservation policy on the user. The user leaves the company. You go into Office 365, delete the AD object, and the license is released, which means you're no longer paying for it. Inactive data can be accessed through e-discovery. Once the hold is removed or the item or the mailbox reaches a certain age that matches the preservation policy limit, it's automatically deleted. So that's the inactive mailbox feature. You guys are welcome to come and ask me more questions about that. I do want to talk about deletion policies a little bit more because today deletion policy is not just used for data management, it's also used for storage management in Exchange, especially your junk email, or if you have spam, all that stuff, you usually use a deletion policy in Exchange to get rid of stuff. You don't want your OneDrive sites to grow out of range, so you kind of use that site deletion policy to kind of make sure your storage doesn't go overboard. Team sharing sites, and then limiting user access to risky data. I already did this particular presentation. All right, so roadmap. I want to spend some time going through these things. How many of you attended the Modern Group session or planning to? Okay. For people who don't know what Modern Groups are, it's the new Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive collaboration tool. It's really cool. You guys should go check it out. Unfortunately, at this point of time, we don't have supported compliance for Modern Groups, but it is coming at the end of the year for people who are interested. We are actively working to make that happen. The next two, those are interesting. How many people from financial sector over here? Or people who know what SEC 17A4 is, right? The definition of immutability is a slightly controversial topic, and people kind of say, well, Microsoft's version of preservation or Microsoft's version of in-place hold or litigation hold doesn't really satisfy the criteria laid down by the SEC 17A4, Sarbanes-Oxley definition of immutability. We think it does, but one of the things that has been accepted right now is software-based preservation is now accepted. But the thing that is not accepted is once you place a preservation policy or once you place a person on hold, if you can go remove it, that kind of breaks the whole immutability thing, right? So what we are working on is a permanent policy, which means once you've placed something on a retention policy or preservation policy, you cannot change it. You cannot lower the length of the policy. You can extend it, but that's it. So that is coming really soon. Once we have that, I think we have truly satisfied the requirements for immutability in SEC 17A4. The other one is supervisory review. This one's interesting because, again, for the financial customers, the way it works is you have your manager who kind of samples a certain set of emails that you send or you receive, and there are some random reports that get generated. For those companies and for others as well, we will be releasing supervisory review pretty soon. Again, end of the year is what we're targeting for releasing this feature. The final one, that's an interesting one. Nobody talks about it, but I do want to bring that up because we have an entire dev team working on that. We generate a lot of data in Office 365. And with big data and all the analytics that's come in, we want to make sure we build features that help you. So give you a scenario. You're using a third-party archive. You have Office 365 mailboxes that are journaling data out of Exchange online into, let's say, your Symantec Enterprise Vault. What we've done is we look at the amount of data that goes out every day. We don't actually look at the actual data, but in general, just a statistical analysis of the data. And anytime we see a dip that deviates from the normal, we go alert the customer. We don't have to do it, but these are the things that we've been working on in the back end. This is great. I'll give you another scenario is you have a policy that's supposed to delete a certain number of items. We see that every day you get 3 million items, 4 million items getting deleted every day, and then suddenly one day there's no items getting deleted or a very small amount. Immediately we know something is wrong. Either the customer went and changed a policy or there's something wrong with us. So we check ours first, and then when we know we haven't done something, we tell the customer, and in more cases than not, it's a person who's gone and done something they did not intend to. So there's a lot of cool things that we are doing in the backend based on the data that we have. It is available in Office 365, and we are trying our best to make sure whatever we build, we are able to ship it in an on-prem version as well. All right. Quickly going into roadmap. So we've come a long way since Exchange 2010. We had Exchange and SharePoint as two different workloads. We've gradually come closer and closer to build this unified experience. we do want to get to a place where Office 365 contains all your data. And this includes everything that is Microsoft data and non-Microsoft data. And we are making sure that we have the ability to import the data into Office 365. If you're a partner, please do contact us. If you have any ideas on how to get more types of data into Office 365, please do contact us. Ben here, who's on my team, is the person responsible for APIs. What that means is we're building a lot of stuff. We're exposing all the activity data that we have out to our partners, which means you guys can go build really cool things as well. And if you're a customer and you're interested in building stuff in-house, again, you can come talk to Ben and he'll tell you exactly how to do that. How do we plan to get there? We want to build compliance into the workloads, and then we want to index more. We want to make our e-discovery work better. So for the people who've not tried our e-discovery or who don't know our e-discovery session, it's at 5 o'clock, and we have some really cool announcements there about just the scale that we've hit with e-discovery in the past 1 year. Really exciting stuff, super fast searches, very accurate searches. And then the best part about that is we bought this company called Equivio January. What they do is they can really help you reduce the cost of e-discovery for you guys. They run some really cool analytics that tell you exactly which is the data that is relevant for this case, and you can play around with that. We'll be at the booth today, and we're happy to give you more demos about that. And then finally, I do want to call out this unified compliance console, one place for all the features that my team has built, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, all the workloads, DLP, device management, auditing reports, archiving, retention, pretty much everything under that one location. So for people who haven't tried it out, it's a really neat place to go try it out. I do want to call this out as well because for the SharePoint folks, Simon did want me to put this up. The API is now publicly available, which means no matter how much data you have on SharePoint on-prem, you can use the API and generate those packages, the prime packages. PowerShell commands are available, and we've also got a bunch of partners who've already built solutions on top of that. And these are the other sessions that we have today. If you notice, there is the e-discovery session at 5 p.m., but all the previous sessions are available on Channel 9 as well, so you guys can go watch that. Otherwise, thank you all for coming. I'll open the mic for questions, please. Thank you. Yep.
Hello. Will there be a way to apply the immutable preservation policy to all newly provisioned mailboxes moving forward? Or do you have to do it one at a time in the console or PowerShell?
That's a good question. So it's going to depend on I think if you have a DL, it would automatically apply. That is a feature that we are working on.
Like maybe a security group that they're all a member of?
Any security group they're a member of, they automatically get added, which means as long as that security group has a policy on it, then you will be able to do it.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Or you can just come up if you don't mind.
The question is, we saw a lot about SharePoint online. Could you talk about compliance for Yammer? Is that in the...
Yes, so Yammer is it's a tough one because we are working to it. The way we are approaching Yammer is treating it as third-party archiving data, which means we are building connectors to pull the data from Yammer into Office 365 into your Exchange mailboxes. I wanted to show you a demo of that, but that's the direction in which we are going, and we are working with a lot of partners. Before the end of the year, definitely we'll have something.
And one other question is, in terms of licensing, do you need to have an E3 license to access the Compliance Center?
Ben, do you need E3?
No. All enterprise SKUs.
All enterprise SKUs.
And a follow-up to that, so what is the natural retention for SharePoint assets under E1?
I will have to find out and tell you, but he might know.
Perfect.
As I said, Exchange, I can answer all your questions. SharePoint, Simon there can help you.
Perfect. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm actually running a pilot with this with the Fortune 100. So we're doing this with email, and then we're actually looking to do it with all their enterprise content. And one of the biggest drawbacks so far is the lack of event-based retention. So is there any plan for implementing event-based retention?
Can you give me an example?
So like for instance, their retention schedule says contracts. We keep those for active plus 7 years. So what is that active period? It's not based on the last modified date, and it's not based on the last created date or whatever. So how do you implement something like that? Or
So are you talking about last viewed date? Would that be a good trigger, or?
no, it's based on when the contract's actually expired.
I see. So yes, we are working on that. So I understand your question. So it is in our roadmap. So the OneDrive SharePoint team is actively working on extending it to just beyond last modified and last created.
Okay.
So it is in our roadmap, and we are actively working on that. Apart from that, we also want to integrate some of the cool stuff that the DLP team has built in terms of engines. For example, we say if this email contains a credit card number, then display a policy tip, right? We also want to run that on data at rest and say anything that gets classified by the DLP at rest engine, apply this policy. So we're also working on stuff like that.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
With her first? In the middle.
Oh, sorry. See you. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a disclaimer. I'm kind of new at ADFS, so I could be doing this wrong.
Okay.
But we are syncing Office 365 with ADFS in our AD environment. And we noticed, and I haven't done this in a while, but we noticed when we delete a user out of AD, it blows away the mailbox. How do
Yes.
I keep that from happening?
What is your intent for deleting the AD object on-prem?
We have a SOX policy to delete users after 60 days if they've been disabled.
I see. But you do still want to keep the mailbox?
Correct.
And so that is pretty much the inactive user example that I gave. What you want to do is apply a litigation hold or an in-place hold right now on the Exchange mailbox. Is your mailbox management done from on-prem or in the cloud?
Cloud.
In that case, it's really easy to go, apply a litigation hold on the mailbox. Once that flag is on the mailbox, no matter what happens through ADFS, the mailbox does not get deleted. It keeps it is preserved.
Okay.
That's how you do it.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep.
So we have Symantec Enterprise Vault and an on-prem Exchange server, and that's not been driven by e-discovery or illegal retention, but mostly because of archive for email.
Yep.
Our users expect us to keep their email forever, and I have a feeling we're not going to be able to change their mind to delete stuff sooner. If I've understood your presentation correctly, with O365, which we've held off on doing because of that very reason, we can use the email archive feature to retain their email and make it available for them indefinitely?
Indefinitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, will that also work on a Mac? I noticed that you said it's built into Outlook, but is it also going to be built into Outlook for Mac, or do they have to go to the website
So
to search their archive?
The latest version of Outlook for Mac, we did build archiving support. So they should be able to see the archive node in Mac for Outlook for Mac.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the method in which they search is not just browse through millions and millions of emails, but they can literally run queries and searches. Okay. And does the searches also search the attachments, or is it just the bodies of the email?
It is. I don't know if you attended the new Exchange 2016 release.
I did.
But what they did was change the search. And what we've implemented is the new search. The archive is simply another mailbox.
Yes.
So all the benefits that we get with the Exchange platform would automatically accrue to the archive.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, what about supporting worm devices?
So that's a good question. Worm is just one way of immutability.
Right.
We believe in software-based immutability. We've got IBM who says software-based immutability is good. We've got several judges ruling in our favor that software immutability is okay. Our solution is always going to be software-based, and it's always going to be in place. But if you look at the actual definition of immutability, it doesn't say worm. It just says, and again, your definition of worm could be hardware-based. I'm guessing that's what you mean.
Oh, no, either software approved or hardware.
Yeah,
But I would
so-
expect it would be software.
Yeah, so for us, yeah, write once, read many, yes, that is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, which is once you place somebody on hold or on a preservation policy, we guarantee that we will keep that data. The only thing that we've been missing is anybody can go remove that policy or remove that hold. That makes the whole thing non-immutable, and that's what we're fixing very soon.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah.
In Office 365, is there a way to notify the users before deleting their files when they at the end of their life?
So can you give me a scenario, please?
So let's say we have a document library and the retention policy is 3 years.
Yeah.
And after 3 years, the system would delete the files.
Yeah.
And we would like to inform our user that we'll
Got it.
delete all of these files. Is it okay, or you want to keep it for, let's say, another 3 years?
Got it. No, that feature exists in Exchange where 30 days before deletion, we kind of tell you, okay, this item is about to be deleted. We are building something similar with the tips engine in SharePoint as well, end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For importing PST files, do you support a mailbox having multiple PST files?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You can import as many PSTs as you want into the mailbox. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing I was wondering is, now this might just be more of a user type thing. It's like, so there might be some emails that we need to keep for 7 years and other emails we don't care about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, let's go have lunch today.
Yeah.
You're just still reliant on the user, obviously, to put emails in the appropriate mailbox or folder.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how would you classify those today? How would you know what is an important email and what isn't?
That's actually part of the user education challenge. We're trying to plan out like what's a record and what's not a record.
Right. So the way we see it is records management is kind of retention on steroids. The goal of this team, the archiving team, is to get all the features of records management into our retention. So that's where we're heading, right? What that means is classification, workflows, all that stuff. We want to eventually integrate into our retention experience, but still keep it in place without having you to move the data out of where it is today and put it somewhere else, like the record center in SharePoint. Our strategy is in place. We will build all the features that will help us get to that place where record center is right now.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, I've got a few questions about the PST imports.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, if I'm using the regular sync import, just like if I've got their Outlook and I import it into their Outlook and it pulls it up, what's the current bandwidth limitation right now?
It depends on what Outlook, where you're located and where the user is located.
What's Microsoft's limit though? Like even if I'm using the PST capture and I try to send it up, what's the limit of how much it'll let me send at one time?
I don't know the answer to that, but is there a reason you're asking that question?
Well, I was wondering, you said there's the option where you can do the hard drive import or you can do that other FTP style import.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering if that had that same speed
No.
restriction.
No, that's the whole point, right? Because you are simply doing an FTP transfer. If you do it directly into Exchange, what ends up happening is the PST needs to get indexed. It needs to figure out which mailbox to go into. The writing speed it uses EWS, which is a far slower protocol. Whereas what we've built between Azure and Exchange Online is a much faster protocol that is on steroids pretty much.
Right.
So we will get much higher speeds. And that's the main reason why we are going with that as a future direction.
Okay, so FTP will almost get maybe potentially what my bandwidth is
That's
up
it.
to this. Okay.
Exactly.
Now the other question is, you said that if you send up a hard drive, you
Mm-hmm.
might say, I want to only import this many users this week. How long will you keep a hard drive?
So the data in the hard drive we would return immediately. The data in Azure Blob, we would keep it for 90 days. 90 days after we've either touched it or 90 days from the time it came in.
Okay.
That's the retention period.
Okay, so, but I mean, as far as like, let's say I have a 6-month-long project, and I send you a huge drive that's got all of everybody's PSTs on it. I'm importing a little bit, 1 week, 1 month, one.
Yep.
Is there a limit to how long you'll hold that drive for me?
Yes, so again, I just want to make sure I clarify that. We don't actually hold the drive. We would copy the data from the drive into Azure Blob. So for your scenario, I might have been misleading in the beginning. What you can do is ship me just the right amount of drives with the right amount of data for that period. That'll work too.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, sorry, real quick question following from the lady asking about the new inactive user feature. Is that available across all SKUs, all licenses?
So in order to place a mailbox on hold or to use the preservation policy, you do need an E3 license.
Right.
So that's what you would need. But once you place that mailbox on hold, once you remove the license, you're not paying anything, right?
So you can upgrade to E3.
And you can reuse that one license over and over and over again if you want to. So all you need is that one license.
Cool. Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm looking to match in-place hold policies to retention policies. So what they're looking to do is anything that was deleted for it not to be discoverable after 30 days, anything in the sent folder not to be discoverable after 90 days, and anything in the inbox in the rest of the folders to not be discoverable after 1 year.
Okay.
Can I do that?
Yes. So the way you would do that is not through in-place hold, but with what is called retention policy and retention tags in Exchange. Let me give you a quick look at what that looks like.
But
so if you see here, oh, my bad. Thank you, Gary. If you see here, apply to default folder. You can pick what folder you want. So you've got your inbox, junk, sent, and then you can specify, what you want to do, which is the permanently delete, and then specify 90 days, let's say for the inbox, and so on and so forth. So you can create multiple tags for each folder, and then box them up and put them in a policy, and then at the end of it, you apply that policy to the mailboxes that you want.
okay, and then at that point, if we need to put a user on in-place hold, then everything will stay.
Just get preserved.
Okay, and then someone told me, whether it's true or not, that if you place multiple users or multiple queries, like 5 or more, on in-place hold, it ends up holding everything?
Yes. It is just a performance thing. If you're going to place, I think it's not 5, I think it's closer to 50. I can verify that. If you come to the booth, I'll ask the eDiscovery guys and tell you what that is.
Okay,
Yeah.
but then people, if they want to get rid of, they're not getting rid of anything then, because
That's right.
everything becomes discoverable
That's right.
for every user.
But I think that will change. I think it was a performance limitation in the earlier versions, but we've since then fixed a lot of our perf issues, so I don't think it'll be enforced anymore. I can verify that with the team and get back to you if you come to the booth.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
We're currently using a third-party journaling tool to capture everything going in and out of the organization. And our users are spoiled because it has a nice interface where they can go in and search just for their account everything that's ever been sent to them or from them. It's my understanding that eDiscovery with Microsoft's 365 archive doesn't have that. It's really for administrators, legal personnel, etc. So I was wondering, will that exist at some point in time, or does it already and I just don't know about it?
Yeah, it does exist. So as I mentioned, our solution is in place. What that means is everything that you get, you keep it where it is. You don't take it out, put it somewhere, right? Your primary mailbox today can support 50 gigs of data. Your archive is unlimited, which means you don't have to journal it out anywhere. But it also means everything is in your mailbox, everything is accessible through Outlook Hanover. You don't need that third-party tool. So what you need to do is retire that third-party tool that you're using, pull all the data into Exchange, which we can support right now, and then your users are just going to look at everything through Outlook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Two real quick questions here. On the drive ship option, if let's say you're doing 50 or 100 terabytes, do you actually send some sort of status updates as far as what mailboxes have been updated and so forth? Is that like a daily basis?
Yes. So we do have the portal, and you can look at all the information in the portal. Let me show you. Give me 1 second while I refresh. It's probably it. So if you see this, all your job details, every step would get created over here, like job created, drive shipped, drives received, upload into staging area completed, import into Exchange in progress. And then underneath over here, for each file, you'll have a status update of how much percentage is completed. You can click on that and see the details of the files that were skipped, the items that were skipped. You'll get to see pretty much everything.
What about on those items that are skipped? What kind of remediation do I have for that?
Unfortunately, there isn't one. So the way, at least in Microsoft, the way we do that is we know some items are corrupt. What they do is they try to run scanpst.exe on some of the PST files. You have to run it like 4 times before you know it's actually everything is fixed. But even after that, there are some files that are just not recoverable. So we will give you the report that says these are the files that could not be, or these are the items that could not be imported. So if you're ever in a scenario where you're in a case and people say, well, I need this file, you have the report from Microsoft that says this was a corrupt file. So that's what we use internally.
Okay. And then another thing is just on the BCCDL preservation, is that in Office 365 now, or is that in preview?
Oh, it is. It has been live since January.
In January, okay.
Yeah.
And is it also ported back to on-prem like in 2013 or 2010?
I do not know the answer. I can find out and tell you. If you send me an email, Sanjay is the PM for that. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it here today, but we will definitely let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, guys. Whoever stayed back, thank you so much. Well done, young man. Thank you, sir.